All right, let's get this thing started. Let's get it started. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock, the hardest working, and I do mean the hardest working sometimes, show on the internet today. I am your host, Christopher Mader, and this is the continuing series we call the candidate interviews. And since 2008, the Meat and Potato Show has had the great pleasure to speak to many candidates nationwide from all parties, everyone, Democrat, Republican, independence groups, men, women, all creeds, colors, everywhere. Dozens and dozens, we're in the hundreds now of candidates that we have interviewed since 2008 on this show. And today's guest joins that growing list as we roll into the 2015 and 2016 election season. And she is an experienced public servant. Her professional career has spanned the fields of law, finance, and executive business management. She combines informed administrative planning with a respect for the dignity and independent working spirit of the American citizen. Thank you. Firmly believing that the surest path to success is freedom to the greatest extent possible from government interference. Thank you. She advocates low taxes and strict limits on the regulations and bureaucracy that impede people from performing at their best. She currently sits as the director of the Woodbridge Village Association and has served in numerous other public positions, which we will get into as the interview goes along, during her distinguished career. My guest is currently seeking the position of mayor to the great city of Irvine, California, and proving once again that the Meat and Potato Show is nationwide. Calling in from California, Republican mayoral candidate Katherine Daigle. Katherine, sorry for the mix-up earlier. Welcome to the show. How are you, Katherine?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better now that I finally got you somehow connected here, which is a lot better. Katherine, I've been reading your campaign website. You're an absolutely fantastic writer. Did you write most of the stuff that's on there, or all of the stuff?
Actually, I wrote, I would say about 80% of it. I do have a little bit of help, but most of it comes from me and what I feel is wrong in the United States.
Certainly. I don't blame you for that. I don't blame you. I mean, the writing is absolutely fantastic, and I'll be taking a few quotes as we go along in the interview here. So let's get right into the interview. One of the things, I want to grab a note over here. One of the things we've been attending here in Worcester, Massachusetts, Worcester is having this, because of all the stuff that's been going on lately in the news, it seems as if the city of Worcester, the Department of Justice have somehow teamed up together to hold these forums in the city once a week at various locations to discuss bias and race. There was some about the media, there was some about just racism. The other night I attended one about racism that exists in the schools. I personally think we're going a little overboard. I tend to stay silent at these things because I've tried to speak up a few times, and even though they say the events are all about tolerance and understanding, the minute you say anything counter or disagree about anything that they're trying to say, you're instantly shot down. But like I said, it's all about tolerance and understanding, right, Katherine? So, that's the way it goes. So let's get into the first question. The fomenting of racism. It's rearing its ugly head once again in America, except that today it is systematically manufactured by an institution hell-bent on stoking the fires. Here in Massachusetts, the city of Worcester, as I just said, has been holding weekly forums on bias and race. The guidelines and handouts, and I've got some right here, they're all textbook racial terms. They're all textbook narratives, prescribed talking points. And in California, and I got this from your site, there's actually a company making money off of race baiting. And this is from your blog. The company is called Pacific Education Group. It's an organization of such people arguing that non-white students, especially African Americans, and I have no idea what an African American is. I know what an American is. I don't know what an African American is. Should be treated differently than whites as a result of bygone evils. Worse yet, indoctrinating children into believing that they will unavoidably be victimized by institutional racism of a kind that has not existed for half a century does them a profound personal disservice by promoting apathy. Katherine, are the race baiters like Pacific Education Group, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Barack Hussein Obama, are they keeping this angst alive for a profit motive?
My personal belief is I heard about this through the Bill O'Reilly show. I tune into his program every day, and he brought up this particular company. So I went directly to their site that evening and found pages and pages of elementary, middle schools, high schools listed on where they're indoctrinating students. Now, first and foremost, where are they getting the money? Because this is very expensive. These consultants are charging lots of money to indoctrinate these children. And where are the parents? Do they know about what's going on? So I got very, very angry. And so I was a little taken aback whether I should discuss this because someone may call me racial. But it really is not a race issue. It's an education issue.
Yes.
And to not test and to not make sure that every child has the tools to be educated just like everyone else, then they are being cheated out of an education. So I got very, very angry, so I wrote about it. And since then, this specific educational group has taken down and scraped their site of all the school districts that are part of their consulting program. And they're all over. It's mostly in the East and the Midwest, some here in California, like Berkeley and that sort of thing. But it is strangely in more democratic boundaries where there are far more Democrats than there are Republicans.
Yes.
And I suspect they will continue to grow, but I don't know where they're getting the funding. So someone needs to follow the money. So it's something that I'm working on right now because I'd like to find out where they're getting all this money. It's a big organization.
Sure, right, of course it is. And one of the things that they talked about at the forums that we were at, you always hear those catchphrases, education, education, we need more education, we need more funding, we need more education, we need more funding. You hear it all the time from the liberals. You hear it, and this is, it's on my sites, I film these things, this is what you hear them saying. So I'm scratching my head thinking to myself, and this is when you have one of those epiphany moments where you're scratching your head and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, okay, we're supposed to be jumping on Common Core, and we'll get to Common Core in a minute, but because we're talking about race, this thought just came into my head. We're jumping on this concept of Common Core. Everything's got to be standardized, everything's got to be the same, you know, everyone has to be equal, but yet the groups that we heard about, and you've probably heard the same thing, they're saying that, well, we need individual studies for African Americans. We need individual studies for Asian Americans. We need individual studies for, you know, this group and that group. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. If we're supposed to have Common Core, where everything's supposed to be the same, everything's supposed to be gray, how are we going to incorporate these individual studies of individual ethnicities in individual classrooms when you guys are adopting Common Core? This is liberalism oxymoronism, isn't it, Katherine?
I believe so. And, you know, quite frankly, it's really not so much the other groups. It's primarily the African American groups that seem to head down this rabbit hole. And I'm not really sure why all of a sudden. I guess because of the lack of education and the lack of the amount of education that the children absorb in the schools that are the poorest and greatest ranked schools.
that in your blog. And here's the thing that burned my brisket right there. It's like, okay, well, where are all the special interest groups helping Katherine and the millions of other single mothers out there? And wasn't there, excuse me, again, that epiphany moment where I'm scratching my head, wasn't there like a feminist movement back in the 60s and 70s? I, a woman, hear me roar. Where were all these groups to help? Katherine, your story is exactly the same as mine. My dad left when I was 9 years old. My mother raised me all by herself. I mean, I'm a total right-wing conservative now, but I mean, I am probably the most ultra-feminist you could ever meet on the planet, because I have that same story that you just told about you raising your child. There was nobody there to help my mother. There was no Al Sharpton. There was no, well, there was Gloria Steinem, but she was just doing what Gloria does. But there was none of that going on. I mean, we've entered bizarro world here now, haven't we?
Well, but it's been going on a very long time, because I lost my father when I was 10. So my mother brought me up.
Right.
She worked for a retail shop. So the point is just constant. The poorest people finally realize that if they pull themselves up by the bootstrap and they watch their children very closely, make sure they go to schools and they make sure they will get exactly what you pay for in those schools.
Right.
Then, and only then, have you been taking advantage of what the government has given you. When you have parents that decided that they just let the kids go in the morning and go to school and hope for the best, there's the disconnect. I think, I'm almost really sure about this, that the disconnect, not only is there not sometimes bad teachers, but there are nothing going on in the home to encourage
Right.
Self-responsibility and the responsibility to their own children. Because, my God, what's going to happen to us? There are children. They're supposed to be the next engineers, the next government officials, the next generation of presidents. What's going to happen? It's just getting worse.
I'm wondering if part of it is planned. I think it's planned to foment a complete dependence society. Therefore, government can grow exponentially. They can always, well, I don't know how educated you are on the tenets of Saul Alinsky and technocracy and the writings of Scott and Hubbard. And I mean, these guys figured it out way back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that, you know, we're not going to win America by overt war and overt taking over of their government, but we can win generationally by just indoctrinating the children, taking over the institutions. That's what's happened. Now, here we are at this, and while we're discussing race, you mentioned in another piece about how Irvine is one of the safest cities to live in. Now, the riots that we've seen over the past months are occurring in primarily black communities. From Baltimore, Ferguson, I know it's somewhat of a mixed race community, but the riots took place in the black communities over there. The war on poverty, $40 trillion. Now, if the Democratic plan in these primarily Democratic-held communities works so well, it's kumbaya, oh, it's going to be wonderful, then what the hell is going wrong here? And second part of that question is, how does Irvine get to that point, get to that rating?
You're wondering why we're so different than back east, and why the powers to be, the political powers to be, allow race baiting. At least that's, I saw the Philadelphia issue. I was part of all of that. And I also was part of the Los Angeles issue about 7 to 10 years ago when we had those riots here. And them destroying their own property and the businesses that are around them, I don't understand the mentality. However, I did write a particular story that endeared a woman who saw her child in the street and ran and grabbed that child, beat the hell out of him in the middle of the street.
And said told him to get his ass home. That's right. Exactly.
That was the best thing I've ever seen, and that was basically what I've been saying. Parents are taking responsibility, and some parents do not.
Right.
Here in Irvine, we have a specific type of family organization. Number one, we have young families. Number two, we have two highly educated entities. We have an Asian entity, which is about 43%, and we have white, which is about 48 or 49%. And then we have a small percentage of Muslim and Black, African American, and Hispanic. So this is more of a planned community with families and homes. At the beginning, we didn't have a whole lot of apartments. Now we're bringing in a lot of apartments and we're growing. So we're seeing some of that crime in this city as far as theft is concerned. We don't have a low violence problem. We have very little, next to no shootings here. Because that's just currently non-existent. But we do have theft, and we do have burglaries, and we do have people's bodies showing up in Trump's cars. So we have these things, and we have a lack of police officers. So it is important that we beef them up because we have an influx of people coming in from overseas. I don't know if you read some of my stories on that subject, but we have a lot of immigrants coming here and buying homes. They buy the homes, they have their children, and then they leave. And they rent out those homes to people, and we have a lot of transients.
Okay, so let me stop you there. And this is one of the things I say on my show all of the time. You use the word immigrants. I don't think you actually mean the word immigrant. I think what you're talking about is illegals. Immigrants are people who come here legally, pay their way, wait their turn in line, want to come to America, make a life in America, make their lives better, make their children's lives better. The scenario you just painted right there, I'm sorry, I've done a lot. I've been doing the show since 2008 and covering the problem of illegals since then. I think what you're saying, and I understand why you don't want to use the term, because we live in a world of where free speech is no longer allowed, but this is my show, so I don't give a damn. I think maybe you're talking about some illegals because you just painted that scenario, because that exists here in Worcester. There are illegals who come here, they live, yes, they rent out places, get places, they get on the dole, they get their children into school, they move out, and now this is a transient home. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sorry, but take it from there.
Let me stop you there. There's one caveat to this. They come here on a travel visa for a vacation. That's how the FBI got them. They come here on a travel visa. They enjoy their travel and the vacation up until they give birth to the child. The child is born in the United States. They stay here for a few weeks because it's, I guess, in their culture that the children and the families have to stay. I'm not real sure about the culture, but it's somewhere in the culture they have to kind of stay and take it easy. And so once that time frame has elapsed, their visas have elapsed and they go home.
That's right. Yep.
So it's our vacation. They call it a vacation. But the problem is they leave have PR agencies and advertising agencies in that country. And they are actually putting up big billboards saying, come and buy your home here in Irvine. And they are buying these homes. My home is worth 5 times the amount it ever was. My child will never be able to own a home here. Neither will any other American, unless they're part of the top 1 or 2%. The median family income is $92,000. The median house is $85,000.
Right.
So there is an impact in our schools because of it. My daughter can't get in. So there's a lot of interest here, and it's just beginning with other types of immigrants that are coming here. I don't want to use the word illegal in there because they have a visa for travel, so it makes them not illegal. It just makes them not pay their bills.
That's unbelievable. It's a loophole. It's a way to get around the loophole.
It is.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, well, this is part of the destruction of the culture, destruction of the country, destruction of our way of life that has been going on for quite some time in this country. It's not just fomented by Democrats, it's also fomented by Republicans because there's money to be made. I just told you, look at this group that we talked about. What is it? The Pacific Education Group? It's like, oh great, so if we do this, if you guys pass this bill allowing this, great, then I get to have my company and I get to set my company up. Hey, great, we can call it capitalism all you want, but it's malfeasance and it's criminal capitalism, and it's unbelievable. So let's move on. I was hoping we could have a very happy interview here, Katherine.
We can't. The city is a beautiful city, and there's great families here. My neighborhood, the families here have been here as long as I have, which is over 20-some years. And with that comes, new development, and in that comes, people with lots of money willing to get paid for candidates.
Sure, right.
And these paid for candidates don't really care. They want the powers around them to be very, very successful.
Certainly.
And unfortunately, the taxpayer will pay for it. So, demographics are very important to any society, any town, any community. It's just different. We have different problems than, for example, the inner city. And as we grow from, we started at 60,000, 70,000 people. As we grow at 250,000, so is crime.
Right.
So is safety. So is the roads. Money has not been put into the infrastructure to support this.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got issues here that need to be looked at. So, a funny little story. Last year in August, my husband caught people stealing from other vehicles in the senior center the Cadillac converters, because we have a lot of them there.
Well, the catalytic converters, yes, I know. Yeah. We have that here.
So essentially, the police caught several guys with several of them in their car. That was in August of last year. 3 months ago, maybe 8 weeks ago, my husband talked with the senior center because he helps the community support, and his Cadillac converter was stolen. So there is more and more, and people are over $1,000 to be replaced.
Right.
So you're talking about tons and tons of people coming into the city and just stealing car parts and just taking them in their cars and driving right on the street with them.
Well,
So we're working out we don't have so much gang murders, but as we grow, we're going to need a stricter, tighter law enforcement.
right.
And that's where we don't have.
Let's move on. Let's move on through the interview here. I want to start this next question with a quote from your campaign page. And again, folks, you gotta go onto her campaign page. The writings are absolute. Like she said earlier, she wrote about 80% of it, and and I know what she means by that. She had somebody help fix sentences, grammatical. That I have people that do that for me myself. But basically everything that you see that you read on her site is written by Katherine. She's a phenomenal writer. It's unbelievable. Take it from somebody who does a lot of writing. Trust me. So let's start here. From your campaign page, and I quote: "Freedom and free enterprise, jobs should be the guiding force. It is the American way of life, not government regulation. Put taxpayers first." Now, California is mirroring Massachusetts in that we are experiencing, both you and here in Massachusetts also, a net job loss. We're also experiencing a net population loss. People and businesses are pulling up stakes and moving out of both of our states to other states with lower taxes, lower regulations, more opportunities, and more jobs. And it's a fact, it's been all over the news, that many people in California are pulling, businesses and people, they're pulling up stakes, they're moving to Texas. And everyone's screaming and yelling about Rick Perry running for president. But Rick Perry is going to run on his record, that he's lowered the taxes, lowered the regulations, opened up the state. Texas has a net growth of population, net growth of jobs, net growth of income. California has a net loss. Massachusetts, I live here. Massachusetts has a net loss of population, net loss of jobs, net loss of new business. Nobody who comes up with a new idea and gets funding and starts their business, and then when the guys or girls who work to help get started, they look at each other and say, well, where do you want to set up our building? Where do you want to set it up? Let's go to California. Yeah, because it's so good for economic opportunity. Let's go to Massachusetts. Yeah, let's go there because it's so good for economic opportunity. That is not happening. Are you seeing this in Irvine? You just talked about there's jobs. There are some things going here, but writ large is what I want to say. Are you seeing that?
I have personal experience, so I can address it personally.
Go ahead.
It is here like it is every place else. People are underemployed, or people are multiple underemployed. Let me use my home as an example. In 2010, I had worked for a company for 20 years. I worked from a nothing to a executive vice president of legal affairs. The company was purchased by a French-based company, and within 60 days I was let go in 2010.
Of course.
So was everybody, all the other executives. So sad, too bad. I was given a significant amount of money because I started that company.
Right.
So 8-9 months later, I had a stroke. During that time, I went through every penny of that money because no one had insurance. This state has no insurance. This state offered no alternative. This state offered nothing, with the exception of the unemployment benefit.
Right.
And after X amount of time,
that runs out, right.
So people like myself who are heavily educated, that, I have a master's degree, I have 2 years of law school, and there are a lot of people like me that have no jobs. We take jobs that are part-time, that can make our house payments, because my daughter works, my husband works 2 jobs, and we work together so we don't lose our home. Everyone in my neighborhood does this.
Right.
The kids move home and help. So this is not a place for a business to start up. Most of the small businesses in this community have left. They cannot work here.
Right.
They can't stay employed here. And the businesses can't make any money here. So they rolled up their little shops, and the big conglomerates have come in,
No, that's a lie. Donald,
That's a lie.
Donald Trump was brave enough to say it today. It was unbelievable. I'm glad he said it. 18 to 20%. Trust me, folks. 18 to 20%.
Yes. In this city, I know in my own block, 80% of them are either in the house, so they don't have jobs. So it took a long time for me to recover, and I went out looking for a job, and nobody would hire someone with a disability. I have my foot doesn't work as well. I need to change block. So if you have any issues with you, or you can't get back and forth to work because you no longer have a car, so you have to give up your car, or you have to live in a rent-controlled property, which there are 5-year waiting lists.
Right.
That's the point. I'm saying no one is making it. So you've got so many people that are trying to go back to school, at least in my neighborhood, because they know they can try to get a job after they've completed some kind of additional schooling, and they're getting enough.
That's make work. That comes back from Roosevelt. That the whole make work thing. Oh, I'm unemployed right now too, and I've got to go down to the unemployment office. I've got to attend these classes. I've got to attend, and I've been unemployed before. It's make work. It doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't result in anything. It doesn't end up with anything.
No.
Nothing. Zero. Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. And when you don't have employers hiring, or what they're doing is they have to put out that they're hiring, they're just making a strategic move internally by bringing someone up from the lower ranks, and then they'll backfill
Yes.
into the part-time positions.
Yes. And let me tell you something exactly that's going on. You probably know about this too because you have a master's in business and you've been in business. Is that some of the TARP money that was spent, and this is a fact. And I had to point this out to an employer because they were like, "Oh no, you're wrong." It's like, no, I'm not. I do a radio show. I'm a journalist. I do this research like 24/7 all the time. So basically, in the TARP money, what they did is a way to incentivize businesses to hire people is they gave them tax breaks. They gave them tax breaks, tax credits, yada yada. You know the catchwords. You know the catchwords, Catherine. So, and they range anywhere. The low end is about $2,500, and it ranges up to $4,500 depending on the demographic you hire from. We're talking disabled vets. We're talking about handicap. We're talking about people who are formerly low income, housing, the whole government programs, welfare, people who are on temporary need or whatever. You get if you hire somebody from that demographic, you get X amount of tax break for your company. So companies, and I did this, I worked for Target, and I'm not afraid to say this because it's my show. So I got hired by Target, and I was on unemployment, and I knew I was there with a pool of a bunch of other people. So we all got in there, we all got hired, and this is what I knew. Sure enough, about a year or so later, we all got laid off. Now people are saying, well, wait a minute, why did we get laid off while at the same time? And we saw this, it was right there in front of our face. They're ushering in new people for orientation, their new jobs. And I told them, I said, listen, it's no skin off their back to lay somebody off. They already pay unemployment insurance. They already pay these taxes. So it's no skin off their back to lay somebody off. However, hiring somebody who's on the dole, welfare, special needs, this, that, list all the government, woody-woos that you want to list, they get a tax break. People were aghast. They were like, are you kidding me? I was like, no. And I actually had to go and look and find it in my archives and records, print the piece of paper out, show it to these people, and it's like, wow. It's like, that's exactly what's happening. There is no incentive to hire people like people like Katherine, MBA, business owner, ran companies. This woman could run the country, for crying out loud. Guess what? She can't get a job. I run a radio show. I built this whole thing entirely by myself. I can hook up electronics, film, do all this stuff. I can't get a job. I can't do it. However, if I was on the dole, I was black, or I was somehow one of those disenfranchised people, $2,500 to $4,500 tax incentives to a company to hire you. But you'll only get to work for about a year or so, because eventually they'll lay you off. Sorry, Catherine. Once you said that thing, I was like, this is it. And I love talking to people like you, because people talk to me and they say, oh, maybe you're crazy. And it's like, no, I have the evidence. I do this research. And then when I interview somebody, a candidate or just an author or anybody on my show, and they start talking about this, it's like, yeah, this person knows about it too. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. I'm sorry, Catherine. Take it from there.
Let me still the fire a little further. When I did work for this small company, I started with 8 people. This guy, the owner of the company, took lots of money. He grew and he grew. Off the backs of those of us who made him what he is, which was a multi-millionaire when he sold the company. At that time, he turned around and basically said to every one of those people, if I get stuck with trying to pay for Obamacare, I'm just going to raise my income. You're going to pay the excess tax, but I'm not making 1 penny less than I did before. All of your bonuses are cut. You're all taking a 15% pay decrease, and everything will remain the same. Now, if in fact I still lose money, then I'm going to have to start laying you off. This is not unusual. This happens to a lot of people. They just don't know it. These owners of businesses, they're not these wonderful people. They always look out for themselves. It's their company. So you have to understand, and everyone needs to understand, that this is the way it is. Business owners are looking out for themselves. If you do something great, then please don't stop looking for another job. Because if they can sell it, get rid of it, or do away with it, especially when you have a president in line to really make you pay for any other additional welfare programs,
right,
you're going to pay for it.
Right.
And you're going to lose your job. The owners pay for it.
Right.
It's a lesson that everyone needs to learn.
I understand what you're saying about how these companies are looking out for themselves. And I understand how you say about the owners are looking out for themselves. I have this horrible affliction. It's called 2 minds. I'm of 2 minds on that. Half of me is saying, well, these goddamn companies, well, you son of a bitch, you're looking out for yourself. But the other mind of me is like, you know what, I really can't blame them. It's like, I really can't. As much as I might want to hate them and be mad, I can't blame them. I mean, because they're struggling along. They're trying to get through payroll. They're trying to pay the electric bill. They're trying, and then at the end of the week, at the end of the month, how much money did we make? We made $50, Joe. It's like, wow. Okay, cool, awesome. We're supposed to be making $50,000 this month, so that we can open up that new plant and hire 15 more people for our new product that we want to unveil. So that once we unveil that new product and we have to manufacture it, tens of thousands, if not millions of people buy that product, then guess what? We have to open up another plant, thus hiring more people.
You are so correct. And that's where the disconnect comes, because those people that stood on those lawns not too long ago didn't understand why businesses had to do what they had to do. It's the government regulations that are ripping their throats out.
Right.
And unfortunately, the employees have to pay the price.
Yeah, the employees, right, they do. Yeah. This is part of what foments communism and the social workers program and the labor union. They keep screaming about how everything. You're right. It's a whole disconnect. God, we don't have enough time to go all into it, but I do. I can. It's that I can see that 6 degrees of separation in there, and it's. Listen. And this leads me to my next question. It really does. It's great that the conversation went this way. We've got to somehow someday uncouple business from government, regulation from government. We've got to uncouple from that. But let me read the next question, and then I want to hear what you have to say about it. Have we come too far in multiple generations, used to government interference, government regulations, handouts, that it might be convulsive to society if we uncouple the government weight to the engine of American enterprise? Go ahead, Catherine.
Well, I believe the country is approaching mass exodus. I also believe, though, that with a new president, things may settle back down. I'm hoping for a president that puts forth jobs, and when you nest jobs, several rate jobs, real jobs. And these real jobs, I just can't believe people would rather sit home and do nothing and collect a check. You've got to put a pin in it someplace, because we as the taxpayers can't afford it. We could go on into a little bit of what the immigration is going to cost us, healthcare, but it's going to get so bad that we don't have enough people working to support it.
We don't. No, we don't.
Yeah, so supporting minimal taxation and returning some of those taxes paid in excess is going to help businesses get out and start hiring. So we have got a strangulation on them. That's my belief.
In the 60s and 70s, the ratio of Social Security was 3 to 4. And when I use that number, I mean that for every 4 people on Social Security, there were 3 people working to pay into the system to keep it alive. Today, it's more like 3 to 1. You have 3 people on Social Security and only 1 person paying into it. And yes, that 1 person paying into it is not paying for these people right now. That 1 person is paying into the future generations.
Yeah.
And so what does that bode? What does that bode for the future? It's not looking good.
The NIMBY crowd, or the NIMBY, not my backyard crowd, feels it's not going to happen to them. And they are completely oblivious to what's going on in the world. Only what affects them directly. So unless you could blow it in their face or stop something by, it's like weaning your child off a pacifier. It's the only way you're going to be able to do it, because so many people are relying on this government subsidy.
Yeah.
I don't see it getting out. It just needs to approach, I know this may be silly, but to approach churches, to approach, humanity, to build homes, starting those types of small communities again for people that have no place to go.
I think eventually we're going to have to go that way. As the entire system falls apart, there's a natural organic. I mean, I'm a big historian, and anytime that huge civilizations have fallen apart, you go through that Dark Ages period.
Yeah.
But then what you see a rebuilding of society in small communities. Small communities take up the slack eventually. And here's the thing, it becomes old-fashioned bartering and trading and old-fashioned capitalism.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing, we scream and yell about capitalism, we scream and yell about it, it's like all the rich, oh my God, tax, and then the whole system falls apart, and what do we go back to? Old-fashioned capitalism. Hey, I have a service. Do you need my help? Yeah, we could use your help. Guess what? If you build me this, because you're good at that, we can supply you with this other thing that you need. It's like, yeah, cool, that'd be great. It's like, hey, I see you got a bunch of corn that you grew last year. Yeah, well, it's kind of surplus. It's like, well, you know what? I see that you got a problem with your windmill over there. It's like, I know how to fix that. It's like, really? Tell you what, you fix my windmill, we'll give you this bunch of corn, and then why don't you come back next month, we'll work something else out. It's called capitalism. It's called bartering and trading. And even though we scream and yell about it today, guess what? When the shit hits the fan, folks, that's what's going to keep us alive as a civilization.
That's exactly right. You are exactly right. And having mobile clinics visiting certain areas of the world, the country, and being able to perform some kind of, mini type of clinics around
Exactly.
the country. It's almost like we have a bookstore that rolled around in a truck in the neighborhoods. It was almost like a library, and it worked. It
Of
worked.
course it works. Hey, look on the bright side, Catherine. At least we'll have 100% employment because somebody better be doing something or you're going to starve to death.
Exactly. Exactly. It's interesting. This girl, I can't say it, I've never had a whole lot of money. But I've had people do something for me that since I was really good at business, I turned around and did something for them. And it works. And sometimes if we just think outside the box, there are many of us who are working that we can get together and figure how we can help one another.
Listen, yeah, I volunteer all the time. I volunteer all the time. I do as much as I can. I like to live off the grid. I got my own garden. I generate half of my own electricity here, and the city of Worcester does not like it. They can go screw themselves. And I'm unemployed right now, but that doesn't mean I'm just sitting here going, oh, I'm unemployed. I actually say, okay, great. I look at it as great. Now I have 8 extra hours a day to go do some stuff. And I go do it. It's unbelievable. Let's move on to the next, because we're already up to the hour. Catherine, can you stick around for a while?
Sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're only about halfway through here. So, but this is what I was telling you about how the conversation will go organically. It's a friendly atmosphere. None of those gotcha questions. And I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for calling into the show here. Let's move on to the next piece. Obamacare is one of those blurring of the lines between where private enterprise begins and government power ends. Obamacare does away with all of that by imposing its will upon citizens and fining them for non-compliance. In a complete lie, the president said not $1 will go to illegals, yet exchanges coast to coast. And I actually posted one of my very first videos on the Meat and Potato Show was my Obamacare application. It even said that you do not have to reveal your legal status. Just fill it out. But if you are a citizen, you gotta say that you're a citizen. Again, folks, we've entered bizarro world here. So, de facto, allowing illegals to partake. Now, California has just passed a law, and when I read Catherine's piece on her website, at the time she wrote it, it was still being debated. Well, as we all know, California loves those big government programs. They've passed this law anyway. And here's the piece that she wrote. The California Senate's Appropriations Committee passed SB 4 to give health care to all illegal/undocumented aliens. I know we want to be so kind. They're criminals. They came here illegally. They crossed the border illegally. End of story. Call things exactly what they are. Estimates based on nonpartisan legislative analyst office projections, SB 4 will cost at least $1 billion. And the cost will be absorbed by, drum roll please, the taxpayers. Go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead.
The businesses it's going to be all our problem. And again, another story, I tried to get on health care through Obamacare when I had the stroke, and I wasn't qualified. I had to pay $2,000 a month.
But I thought it was supposed to be free. It's free healthcare. It's free. You can keep your doctor if you like your doctor.
Well, the funny thing
brings us back to what we said. More crippling, more businesses leaving, more job loss, more on the dole. The cycle it's a gerbil wheel. It's a gerbil wheel of socialism. The gerbil wheel of socialism is this. Okay, you're a gerbil on the wheel of socialism. You're unemployed, you don't work, so you get money from the government. Okay, you're running around the wheel. You get money from the government, and then that money comes in, and then they tax you 60, 70% to pay for all the programs that you get. Okay, so that money that you get from the government is taxed 67%, 60 or 70%. And then you pay those taxes, and then that money goes back into the government so that it can come back around and pay you once again so that you can pay 60, 70%. It's a gerbil wheel. It's a gerbil wheel. You're just going round and round and round and round and round. There's no new money. There's no new inventions. There's no new jobs. There's no incentive. There's no nothing. There's nothing. It's just a gerbil wheel. Go ahead, Katherine.
You have that gerbil wheel, just put on a ditch and into the house.
Yeah, right.
So, that's right. They put a second gun and have to put in another gerbil wheel.
Exactly, right, exactly. I mean, oh, wait a minute. If you had a large enough gerbil wheel and a big enough rabbit or a dog running around there producing electricity, oh, we got to tax you on that. We got to tax you on that. Everything inspected, corrected, and directed. And Obamacare gets into your personal life. You like your doctor, you want to keep your doctor, that's a lie. Listen, when I watched that speech, I remember that State of the Union speech that Obama gave, and Joe Wilson yelled out, "You lied," and everyone got on Joe Wilson. I sat back in my chair, and I'll tell you why I sat back in my chair. And I silently said, "Thank you, Joe. Thank you for saying that." Because at the time I was just starting my radio show here in Worcester, and I was interviewing, the whole Obamacare was coming up. It was about 2009, 2010. I had the great pleasure of talking many, many times to a great man, I won't mention his name, out in the Midwest, out in Illinois. He works, he owns his own private brokerage, he owns his own private insurance exchange program. He went into this, I mean, he dove into this head first. He actually got a copy of the 2,000+ page bill, had he and his employees read everything, go through it, he set up a separate business to debunk this whole thing. The guy came on my show about maybe 7, 8 times throughout 2009, 2010. So I have a unique education on this. This entire thing is exactly what everyone warned us about. Go ahead, Katherine.
Well, I don't even know what to say to you. It's just,
it's happening. It's right here in front of our face. Here's the thing that really blows my mind. Here's the thing that blows my mind, and you're running. You have to deal with these people. You have to deal with your opponents who talk about, well, we're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about gay marriage and gay rights, and we're going to talk about all the watchwords. Meanwhile, a person like you and a person like me sees this other crap that's going on. It's like, why is nobody paying attention to this? This is the white elephant in the room. No one's paying attention to this. And this white elephant is about to take a giant you-know-what right here in the room. And guess what? We're all going to have to clean it up. We're all going to have to clean it up. And what I can't wait is for when that giant elephant does what I just said, all the people leave the room and say, oh no, that's somebody else's job. Then you start to see the devolvement. You start to see the dismantling of who the true leaders are. The people who actually look at this and say, I've been talking about this goddamn white elephant for 4 years now. No one paid attention. I lost 2 elections, and here we are. And guess what? Guess what? It always happens. People are going to come to you, Katherine, and say, Katherine, you were talking about this last year. Hey, well, what do you got? Well, Katherine, what do you think we should do? That's what's going to happen, isn't it?
If I get elected, it will. Other than that, people will just read my story.
Exactly.
And not do a damn thing.
I'm not going to do it. You guys clean it. You guys started this mess. You guys clean it up. Exactly.
Most people do not read, do not
was talking to somebody. I was talking to somebody today. This is the same thing. I was talking to somebody today, and they were coming by my house. My daughter, she's an entrepreneur. She decided, because we moved into a nice place of Worcester, she said, "Dad, I want to start babysitting." She met a bunch of the families. We met a bunch of the families. My daughter's now making money. Yeah, she's making money. It's cash money. And God damn it, I told her, I said, "Don't you tell anybody how much money you're making. You keep that. That's your money. You earned it. You keep it. That's it. That's done." Okay?
Absolutely.
So I'm talking to one of these people, and they're over at my house because they wanted to meet us. That's fine. I understand. They want to vet us. That's fine. And so I was telling them, I was like, "Yeah, I do a radio show. I got to go in my studio. I got to get things set up." And they asked me about, "So what is it?" "Well, oh, you do a radio show?" It's like, "What, do you play music?" "Well, I do on some of my stuff. When I do my late night, it's a rock and talk show." It's like, "Oh, you do a talk show?" It's like, "Yeah, what do you talk about? Sports? What do you talk about? Entertainment?" I was like, "No, I talk about politics. I interview," and I explained to them what my show is. Talk about a blank stare. I mean, it was like a white sheet just pulled over this person's head. I was like, "Oh God, here's another one." Just somebody totally misinformed, totally malinformed. And I told them, "Yeah, it's another election season." "Oh, elections? Oh, well, who's running?"
Yeah.
Like, dude, don't you watch TV? It's like, don't you pay attention? It's like, just common everyday people. I mean, their numbers are growing bigger and bigger, and our numbers, the people who pay attention, are growing lower and lower and lower. It's really
yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's a real easy fix. It really is. It's unfortunate, though, that we can't, candidates such as myself, can't get into everybody's living rooms, can't get to the mailbox. It's very hard to do that when you're dealing with $1 million worth of PAC money coming in to support a side in a small town. So there's got to be other ways, and you've got to be able to talk to these people and say, "You've got to start paying attention because, by the way, one of your people that sits on the council didn't even know we have one of the ninth largest dumps in our city."
Sure, right.
In the country. Our small little jail is turning into a prison in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's next door to the high school. So they're totally misinformed. They don't care. And until something happens that means something to them, that's when
they start demanding. This is the thing. Listen, Catherine, I've interviewed tons of candidates. I told you earlier in the intro to the show. Interviewed tons and tons of candidates, especially here in Massachusetts. 2014 was a great year for me. Usually I do people from all across the country. 2014, I decided to concentrate on right here in Massachusetts. And one of the things that I had seen that was going on is that a lot of these grassroots candidates are doing door knocking. They're quite literally spending, they get out of work, you work, people work, they have to work, and then at the end of the day, they spend 2-3 hours when they're dog-ass tired, they say, "We're going to go into this sector, in this neighborhood, this area, and we're going to knock on every door, we're going to leave cards on all the doors." The question is, are you doing that? Do you have people doing that for you, knocking on doors, saying, "Yes, I'm Katherine Daigle, I'm running for mayor of Irvine. Do you have a moment to talk?" Are you doing that?
Well, I do what I can. As I stated, I need a cane to walk. So I came up with an idea, because I can't get very far.
So you need to get people.
Well, I have my daughter. I try to find volunteers, but generally kids in school don't want to volunteer for political anything, even though we do a lot of volunteer work. I contacted 3 bicycle shops in the neighborhood to see if I can rent a freewheel bicycle so I could get to everyone in the parks and all that stuff. They weren't interested in renting me a tricycle.
See,
so,
this is what I'm talking about. We have a woman here, folks, who has the answers, has the solutions to problems, wants to serve her community, yet the community is doing nothing, nothing to help her do that. It is absolutely, I mean, it's, I can't even, let's move on here. Catherine, it's unbelievable. It's really.
It's true, but it doesn't stop me. I still do what I can with the amount of time that it takes me to visit homes. I can only do like 3 or 4 in a block, and then I drive and do 3 or 4 in another block. But I do. And I also make my homemade spaghetti sauce and give it to them.
Sure.
So thank you for, just sitting with me and talking to me. So I do my best.
Sure. So let's move on here. I want to talk about the water shortage.
Okay.
First question is, how's Irvine dealing with this? How are you guys doing?
Well, interesting enough, I live in Woodbridge, and I'm an elected director to Woodbridge, and we have about 30,000 homeowners here, and we have 2 lakes. We use potable water, and we generally try to do as very little as possible. We're going into turning our grass into plants that require very little water, and we're turning our grass into artificial turf. So we're doing something. We work with the Irvine Water District to use reclaimed and potable water, and got drought-resistant plants and that sort of thing. There's being very strict rules. But your comment about beachfront owners and Malibu and Hollywood
Yes.
came at a very interesting time, because I read in the Orange County Register the top people that use the most water, you're not allowed to know. Did you know that? I was surprised. The water use data is private in California. You can't get to know who's using the water. Disney came up as the biggest single water user, spending $3.35 million on water, more than.
Go ahead. Who is it?
Disney.
Who?
Disney, Walt Disney World. Disneyland.
Jesus.
And then we've got the land barons, university campuses.
Right.
And there's a Kleenex factory. We have a bazillion golf courses out here. So all of those have to comply, or they're going to have a rate hit. But as far as the top end users of the elite, that's all cloak and dagger.
Yeah, it's all cloak and dagger. And let me get back to what you said about, okay, some of these other businesses, golf courses, that, okay, they use water, they're going to get hit with a big rate. Okay, great, fine, we just raise our fees, we pay the rate. That doesn't solve the problem.
No, it does not. My biggest issue is California has always been a drought state.
Right.
This is not new.
Right.
This should have been addressed 10 to 15 years ago.
Exactly.
We have, as I recall, a desalinization plant at Huntington Beach that has not been turned on, and I believe they're in the works of doing so. But these desalinization plants, and even there's some ways to collect humidity and by using technology, is different things that we can use that are economically feasible.
Hello, jobs, construction, hello, jobs.
Exactly, that was my thought process. When I wrote about what we could do, I was looking at a terrible waste disposal plant, and we could certainly put a desalinization plant over there, and this could be paid for. So I'm not sure why we're worried about this big train coming through here when the state is in lack of water, even to the point where we're getting those big
not Jerry.
worrying about
Yeah.
the lock-in.
Yeah, not Jerry Brown. You're not going to get that from Jerry Brown. And guess what? You know what? I'm going to even say this just to balance that knife edge. You would never have gotten that answer from Arnold Schwarzenegger. You wouldn't have gotten it.
No.
You wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, it's both sides. Both sides. You know, the solutions are so simple. They're right there. I told you I interviewed dozens and dozens of candidates. I had LaRouche Democrats on my show multiple times. They talked about the Roosevelt plans. They talked about, you know, the Hoover Dam, the Cooley Dam, all the dams that were put up, all the waterways and sluiceways that were put in to bring water to Southern California. I mean, talk about the Romans are like, hey, good job there, Americans. You know, good job there. That's the engineering. And the LaRouche Democrats had tons of plans to come up. It would create jobs. It would create an environmental structure. It would save the planet, provide water to this primarily hot desert area of California, southern Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. It would solve the problem, and it would increase agriculture. But everyone said they were crazy. Oh, it's like when people say, oh, we ought to go to Mars. It's like, oh, that's a crazy idea. Oh, do you know how many billions of dollars it'll take? Yes, I know. It's like, why don't we start doing it? That way we can start building it, and people can be employed, and maybe somebody being employed can come up with some money and save it and come up with a new idea, to come up with some better idea, to do something else, and create more jobs, and create more stuff. And it's like the ideas are right there. Katherine, I talk to these people, I talk to these candidates, and it's like my mind is like ready to explode, because the answer is right there in front of us. Just go do something. Just go build something. Just go do it. It's like, yeah, it'll take a lot of money. It's like, great, raise the funds, go do it. Just go do it.
Corporate America will make a bundle. They want to start building aqueducts. They want to start moving pipelines from the middle Midwest over here, just like they did with railroad, just like they did everything else. It can be done, and it can be done easily with our technology. For example, we can use our fiber optics in this city, so we can be able to, you can order a pizza using an app, but you can't get the police using an app. You can't tie into any of the municipality services just to let them know they left the water on. It's gotten so archaic.
It is.
There's no reason for this anymore.
I'm going to ask you a very pointed question here, and I told you I wouldn't do any gotcha questions, but there is at least one. Do you adopt the myth of global warming being the culprit of the problem in California?
No, I don't. And I was asked that at a Democrat meeting, and they probably almost took my throat out. I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's cyclical.
Right, exactly. It is. You're in a 100-year drought. Come on.
Yes. I've been around 49, 50 years. We've had different cycles of drought and water,
right,
and freezing and snow and hurricanes. I don't believe the vast majority of what's going on here has to do with
global warming.
Global warming. I just don't, and I don't think I ever will. Nothing's proven that.
Well, here's the thing: it's like people like you and I, and a man always knows to never ask a woman her age. But you and I have been around the block a few times,
Yes.
and so yeah, we've seen this. I remember really warm winters here in New England. I remember really bad winters. We're going through really bad winters right now. We got like 6-7 feet of snow. And I got news for you. I'm only 51 years old. Men aren't afraid to say their age, but guys don't ever ask a woman her age. Anyway, the point. Don't, Katherine, don't. The point I'm saying is that 10 years from now, I could probably be, mowing my lawn in January because it's warm out. And there's no snow, and it's like 50 degrees. And all the lefties will be saying, see, it's global warming. It's like, no, it's not. This is just the crap that happens with Mother Earth, man. It's like, this is just what happens. And here's the thing, 10 years from now, you guys could be deluged with rain, and your reservoirs you guys have to like open up the sluice ways to let the water out, and everyone will be saying, see, it's global warming, California's getting too much rain. 10 years ago, you guys were drying up. It's like, 10 years later, you guys are drowning. It's like, come on, this is the way it is. This is just the way it is. This is just how the planet goes. But the point I want to make here is that you have an entire government down there in California that's jumping on this bandwagon. And they're scaring the population. And therefore, the population is saying, oh, yes, it's global warming. Oh, see, we're suffering. It's global warming. Part of that is because of lack of education. And I don't want to use that. I don't want to use that catchphrase, oh, we need more education, more education. What I'm talking about in education is actually teaching people stuff that they can use. That's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about one more thing, and then I'll let you go here. We're getting down to the bottom of the hour. One of the great pieces you wrote in your campaign website was a great piece that you wrote about women in the military.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was a great, I absolutely read that piece. I'm trying to click it one more time. Let's see if we can get it up here. But I paraphrased.
Home should be where the heart is.
And military women, home, and I reposted it on my site. And there's a piece.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's a really good, there's one, okay, I'm gonna put it right here and highlight it. Hang on.
Okay, I'm already here.
Let's talk about your devotion to women in combat. For decades, we have concentrated on the effects of PTSD on men in combat, since men have, well, we all know, primarily, traditionally, made up the majority of frontline combat personnel. However, with more women joining these forward positions and these forward roles, PTSD is just as likely to affect women as men. And ladies and gentlemen, let me read from another great piece from Katherine's website. And it's from her site, Women in Uniform, Home is Where the Heart Is. I quote, "Rifts can also form between returning women and their families as the person who has lived in a constantly life-threatening hell of violence and danger comes to realize that their loved ones simply cannot understand what they have been through, or by extension, them. It becomes impossible to relate to their own family members even when they want to, because only another combat veteran can possibly know what they are dealing with. This can lead women to seek divorce from husbands who no longer really know them, ripping entire families apart. Seeking refuge from their daily torment in chemical bliss, drug abuse is common. In extreme cases, isolated and lonely former soldiers may commit suicide. Even the hell of war that they survived, proving no match for life in a peaceful world where no one gets you anymore." Katherine, that is an absolutely fantastic line in the piece that you wrote there. We are entering a new phase of combat, a new phase of soldiers coming home with PTSD. Again, in my opening, it was, we primarily focus on the men, the soldiers, the disabled. We know that story. There is this silent minority that's out there, the women who are coming into combat. And this is something women have wanted. This is something that the left has been calling about. This is something that women have wanted, and I think it's absolutely admirable that they want to do that. Women, and I'm going to be a man here for a second, and then I'll let Katherine take over. I'm going to be a man here for a second. Women have this constant, I need to prove myself. I need to be as good as the men or better as the men. They push. As I told you before, I was raised by a single mother. Katherine was raised by a single mother. She, a single mother, raised her own daughter. So this, I don't see that. I see it's like, hey, you good at your job? All right, great, come on, let's go. It's like, that's my discrimination. It's like, hey, you good at what you do? Come on, let's go. That's my litmus test. It's like, I don't care, black, white, gray, one eye from the planet of Zog. I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you are. You're good at your job. Come on, you're on my team. Let's go. That's my thing. However, there is this social stigma that does exist out there. Women need to prove themselves. They want to be better than men. They want to be as good as men. They want to prove. And then here they are. They're out there in combat. They're in that firefight. They see those dismembered bodies. They see their buddies, men and women, blown to bits. They come back with that PTSD. I am wondering where the focus is, where the emphasis is on treating these women. And Catherine, here comes the question. Is that a new paradigm in the subject of PTSD? Catherine, go ahead.
Yes, it is. You know, women weren't built that way. Women want to be strong. Women want to be able to defend their country. So women go to fight for their country. So it's really as simple as that. I don't really see the great divide. I do believe that there is, and even as you read that, I had a tear in my eye because
that's a great piece. That was a great line.
Yeah, it's hard. It's harder on the women than it is on the men. And I really don't even know the reason why. But we aren't built the same. We are not able to turn off our emotions as easily as a man can and separate ourselves from the family. So I believe that's the biggest issue. And the PTSD just further cements it in their heart as well as their mind. Where men can probably not have that in their heart as much as their mind.
Right.
So I think there's the difference. But they still do it. And I have the great pleasure and honor of knowing so many veterans. And right now we're in a fight here in this city to make sure they get their cemetery at a closed electoral voting base where many men and women died for this country. And they're building beautiful homes and a golf course, and they want to see a cemetery. So it is important that we give them their due. It is important that we stand behind them as they have stood behind us. And that's how I feel about that.
Listen, I'm going to be a man for a second. Because part of me, I remember when the debate was going, again, I've got gray hair, I'm 51 years old, I remember this debate. I remember the debate about women in combat. And I remember hearing the hearings and listening to the people saying, well, why aren't women just as good? Well, we've gone beyond that phase. I completely agree. We've gone beyond that phase. Women they're just as fine. It's throw on an M16, go to war. I don't care. That's fine. But in the back of my mind, and again, folks, this is the meat and potato show, so I'm gonna say this. I'm thinking to myself, what happens when they get captured? They're not just gonna get beaten up. They're gonna get raped. And what happens when they're in a firefight and they're in a situation where they might be involved with somebody? Then it might compromise the mission. I know I'm kind of reaching there. It's a possibility. It could happen. These are things that were not being addressed. And in my mind, as I'm listening to these hearings, it's like, this is the reason why half of me, I tell you, I'm always of two minds. The other mind of me was like, yeah, women, you want to go fight? Yeah, go fly helicopters, drive tanks. I don't care, go. Hell, IDF does it all the time. Women in Israel, they fight all the time. In fact, we should probably take a lesson from Israel on how they deal with female PTSD. But that's another show for another day. My premise was, well, what happens on this other side? What happens on this other side? And my big fear was, what happens when they're captured? Because you know the guys just get the shit beaten out of them. and they get tortured, they pull their fingernails out. No, with women, it's going, come on, come on, I'm a guy, we know what's going to happen there.
Oh, yeah.
And then that
Absolutely.
PTSD, then they come home. A female POW held by ISIS for 6 months. What's gonna happen? How the hell? And then she comes home to her daughter and her husband.
Yeah.
It's like how are they gonna be? How are they gonna make that connection again? How are they gonna do that? Do you understand where I'm going here, Catherine?
Absolutely. And I have the same concerns. But as the children and the young women that were stolen from ISIS area, the Arabic area over there, and taken into ISIS, our young daughters who are picking up the phone and Facebook and deciding to run over there to Syria to stand alongside ISIS, this is already being done.
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers, and I don't suspect I probably will. I would love to sit down and interview a woman